The wind howled across the high desert like a dying Comanche war cry when the 7'2" Apache girl stepped out of the dust devil and planted her moccasin boot right on the throat of the last rustler still breathing, her shadow swallowing the bleeding rancher pinned beneath the overturned wagon. And with one lazy flex of her bronze arm, she snapped the rustlers, neck the way a normal woman cracks an egg, then turned those obsidian eyes down at the lone white man gasping in the dirt and said, in a voice deep as canyon thunder, "You gonna have sex with me, cowboy? Or do I leave you here for the buzzards like these others?" If that first raw moment hooked your blood, smash that subscribe button right now so you never miss the wildest, uncensored frontier tales this side of the grave. Because what happened next between Jack Lone Wolf Callahan and the giant warrior woman called Tazhia Firehair would burn saloons down from Santa Fe to Montana with pure legend. Jack had been riding the desolate stretch between the Dragoon Mountains and the Rio Bravo for 12 solitary years ever since Comancheros hanged his wife and son from the same cottonwood. And in all that time, he had never begged, never flinched, never let another soul touch him. But when this towering Apache girl hauled him upright like he weighed nothing and pressed him against the splintered wagon wheel, her bare copper skin still smoking from the gunfight, her braided raven hair thick as ship's rope swinging across breast the size of cavalry saddles, he felt something inside him broke loose that had been chained since the day he buried his family. She smelled of sagebrush, gunpowder, and female heat, and when she spoke again, lips brushing his ear, the words vibrated straight through his ribs. "I saved your cattle. I saved your life. Now you owe me a child, white man, one strong enough to carry both our blood into the next 100 years." Jack tried to laugh it off, told her he was half dead and twice as old, but she just slung his Henry rifle over her own shoulder, scooped him up like a bride, and strode off toward the purple Chiricahua peaks while the sun bled out across the sky and the bodies of 6 rustlers cooled behind them. By nightfall, she had carried him 20 miles without breaking sweat, up switchback trails no horse could climb, to a hidden canyon where a spring bubbled silver under the moon, and a wickiup of willow frame waited already dressed in fresh elk hides. She dropped him on a bed of pine boughs, peeled his blood-crusted shirt away with fingers gentle as they were huge, and when he tried to protest, she simply placed one palm over his heart and said, "Be still, little wolf. Your wounds are mine to heal tonight, your seed mine to take when the healing done." Jack had faced Apache war parties, Mexican banditos, and Montana blizzards that froze men's eyeballs, but nothing scared him like the calm certainty in her voice, because he knew she could crush his skull with a hug, yet chose instead to wash the blood from his chest with warm water from the spring, her touch slow and deliberate, thumbs tracing every old scar until his body betrayed him and rose hard as oak against her thigh. She smiled then, a slow flash of white teeth in the firelight, and whispered, "Good. The dead parts of you still remember how to live." For 3 days and 3 nights she kept him in that canyon, feeding him roasted elk and wild honey, bathing him in the spring, teaching him words in the ND language that tasted like smoke and cedar on his tongue, and every time the sun went down, she took him with the patience of a woman breaking a stallion and the hunger of a mountain cat, riding him until stars exploded behind his eyes, and his voice cracked raw from shouting her name against the canyon walls. She was not cruel, never once used her strength to hurt, but she was relentless, drawing pleasure from him again and again until he thought his bones felt hollowed out and filled with liquid fire. On the 4th morning he woke alone, the wickiup empty, only her scent on the hides and a single eagle feather tied in his hair to prove she had been real. And for the first time in 12 years Jack Callahan felt something sharper than vengeance clawing inside his chest, something that felt dangerously close to hope. He rode out at dawn, following the giant tracks of her moccasins, west toward the silver mines of Tombstone, because a man does not let a woman like that simply vanish, not when she has branded his soul deeper than any iron could brand hide. It took him 9 days of hard riding, asking questions in every dusty cantina and Apache camp, trading whiskey and bullets for whispers, until he found her again standing outside the Oriental Saloon, arms folded, staring down a crowd of drunken miners who thought 7 feet of Apache woman was something they could buy for the price of a beer. One look at Jack and her face split into that wolf grin, and without a word she stepped over the swinging doors, grabbed him by the belt, and carried him up the back stairs, while the piano player downstairs missed every note from pure shock. That night, in a feather bed too small for him alone, she told him her true name was Tazhia Firehair, daughter of the great war chief Nakien, and that she had left her people after a vision at the sacred mountain told her the Apache bloodline would die unless she bred with the strongest lone wolf the spirits could find, a white-eyed rancher who carried death in one hand and sorrow in the other. Jack laughed until tears came, told her he was no stud horse, but she silenced him the only way she knew, rolling on top and pinning his wrists above his head while the headboard cracked against the wall and half of Tombstone heard the legend born. By morning every gambler, gunslinger, and preacher in town knew the story. The giant Apache girl had claimed her man, and any fool who tried to take him would answer to fists that could powder granite. Word spread faster than wildfire in dry grass, and soon bounty hunters, jealous suitors, and even a company of bluecoat cavalry came looking to separate the lovers, either for glory or for the crime of a white man betting an Indian woman taller than most doors. They fought them all, back to back, her swinging a captured cavalry saber like it was a willow switch, him picking off attackers with the Henry she had returned to him wrapped in a beaded sheath she made from the hide of the first rustler she killed for him. They left a trail of broken jaws and smoking wagons from the territorial capital clear to the Mexican border, and every night, no matter how many bullets flew that day, she took him under the stars or in some abandoned mission or once in the middle of a dry riverbed while thunder walked the sky, until Jack forgot what it felt like to sleep without her weight across his chest. Seasons turned. Her belly began to swell with the child the spirits had promised, and for the first time Tazhia grew even fiercer, protective as a she-bear, until the day a posse of 50 men led by a Bible-thumping federal marshal cornered them in a box canyon outside Fort Bowie. The marshal shouted through a megaphone that the woman would be sent back to the reservation in chains and the white man hanged for race treason. Jack looked at Tazhia, 9 months heavy, standing calm with her hands on the curve of their unborn son, and he knew this was the final stand. They fought like demons born, she hurling boulders the size of beer barrels, he shooting until the barrel of his rifle glowed red, but numbers finally told, and a bullet meant for Jack took her high in the shoulder. She staggered, blood running dark down her arm, and for one terrible heartbeat Jack thought the world had ended. Then something happened no living man had ever seen. Tazhia Firehair rose up all 7 feet 2 inches, let out a roar that shattered mesquite trees, and charged the posse barehanded, snapping rifles like kindling, hurling grown men 20 feet through the air, until the survivors threw down their guns and ran screaming of devils and giants. When the dust settled, she walked back to Jack, pressed her bloody hand to his cheek, and whispered, "Our son comes tonight. You will catch him, little wolf." Under a sky full of winter stars, in the same canyon where soldiers still lay broken, Jack delivered his son, a boy with his mother's black eyes and his father's stubborn jaw, and when the child's first cry echoed off the rocks Tazhia smiled the softest smile Jack had ever seen, then closed her eyes and slept the deep sleep of a warrior who had finished her war. Years later, old men in frontier towns would still lower their voices and speak of the ranch that appeared overnight in the most unforgiving corner of Arizona, run by a white-eyed rancher and his 7-foot Apache wife, who never seemed to age, raising a half-breed boy who could out-wrestle full-grown vaqueros before he shaved and outshoot his father before he turned 10. They say if ride near that canyon on certain moonlit nights, you can still see them, Jack and Tazhia, standing on the ridge together, her arm around his shoulders, his head barely reaching her chest, looking out over 1,000 head of cattle and a legacy stronger than empires. And if the wind is right, you might even hear her laugh, deep as thunder rolling across the desert, reminding every lone soul who hears it that love in the Wild West wasn't always gentle, but when it came bigger than mountains and twice as eternal. Now tell me quick in the comments, partner, from which part of the country, or the world, are watching this wild tale tonight? Texas, Montana, Scotland, Australia, wherever you are, drop it below, because the frontier never dies as long as men and women like you keep its fire burning.